The economic legacies of President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump offer distinct approaches that have impacted the American economy, particularly in terms of inflation and trade. While Biden has grappled with rising inflation during his presidency, Trump's focus on protectionist policies, particularly tariffs, also contributed to higher costs for consumers. A comparison of Biden's inflation and Trump's proposed new round of tariffs reveals how each leader's actions shape economic realities in different ways, but both result in financial strain for American households. During his presidency, Trump pursued an aggressive tariff policy, targeting imports from countries like China and the European Union. His tariffs, particularly those on China, were designed to pressure Beijing into adopting fair trade practices. They had unintended consequences for American consumers and businesses. Importers of goods subject to tariffs faced higher costs, which were often passed on to consumers. Everyday items like cars, electronics, and household appliances saw price increases. Additionally, retaliatory tariffs from other nations hurt American farmers and exporters. Looking ahead, Trump's plan to impose new tariffs, including a 20% tariff on most imports and a 60% tariff on Chinese goods, could be even more damaging. Given that Americans buy $3.8 trillion worth of imports each year, such broad tariffs would likely cause significant price hikes on consumer goods. While Trump claims tariffs are not taxes, the reality is that tariffs are essentially customs duties paid by American importers, and these costs inevitably trickle down to consumers. When Biden took office in January 2021, the economy was recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, which had severely disrupted global supply chains and created labor shortages. At the same time, consumer demand surged as people emerged from lockdowns, exacerbating inflationary pressures. Biden's American Rescue Plan, a significant stimulus package designed to jumpstart the economy, further fueled demand, while supply chain bottlenecks and global events, such as the war in Ukraine, pushed up energy and food prices. Inflation peaked at 9% in 2022, affecting nearly all sectors of the economy, from housing and food to energy and consumer goods. Since January 2021, prices have risen by 19.7%, while household incomes have increased by 17.6%. This has resulted in a net loss in purchasing power, with the average household facing an inflation-driven cost increase of $468 per year. While painful, this figure pales in comparison to the potential cost of Trump's proposed tariffs, which would likely add $2,600 per year to household expenses. Trump's first round of tariffs also likely contributed to the inflation surge under Biden. While Biden repealed tariffs on allied nations, he left the China tariffs in place, which continue to add 7.5% to 25% in extra costs on around $280 billion worth of imports annually. Despite Biden's efforts to manage inflation through interest rate hikes and other measures, the lingering effects of Trump's tariffs and global economic disruptions have kept prices elevated. Trump's protectionist tariffs were a deliberate attempt to reshape trade policy, boost domestic manufacturing, and reduce reliance on foreign imports, particularly from China. However, they also contributed to supply chain disruptions, higher production costs, and price increases for consumers. Research on Trump's tariffs shows that while some industries benefited, others, especially those relying on imports, suffered from higher costs and lower profits. Biden's inflation, on the other hand, was driven by a more complex set of factors, including pandemic-related disruptions, fiscal stimulus, and global supply chain issues. While not a direct policy choice, inflation under Biden has impacted all sectors of the economy, eroding household purchasing power. Despite efforts to mitigate inflation through interest rate hikes, the combination of external shocks and domestic policy decisions continues to challenge Biden's administration. As Trump contemplates another presidential run, his promise of new tariffs could impose a greater financial burden on American families than inflation under Biden. In conclusion, while both Trump's tariffs and Biden's inflation have contributed to rising costs for Americans, Trump's proposed new tariffs could bring a fresh wave of price hikes, potentially surpassing the economic strain caused by Biden's inflation.